The evening was calm, the air thick with the scent of rain-soaked pavement as I walked through the door. The familiar warmth of our home greeted me, but something felt off. I found Emily in the kitchen, her back turned to me, hands gripping the counter so tightly that her knuckles were white. The tension in her posture sent a chill up my spine. "Hey," I said cautiously, setting my keys down. "You okay?" She flinched. Not a normal, startled flinch, but something deeper, something cold. I stepped closer, my heartbeat quickening. "Emily?" She turned to face me, and for the first time in 5 years of marriage, I saw fear in her eyes. My stomach twisted. "Sit down," she whispered. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in as I sank into a chair. She placed a folded piece of paper on the table in front of me. Her hands shook as she pushed it toward me. "Before you read this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "just know that I love you, and I never wanted to lie to you." The paper felt heavier than it should have. With a deep breath, I unfolded it. At first, the words blurred together, but as my eyes adjusted, my breath hitched. It was a marriage certificate, dated 7 years ago, and next to Emily's name was another man's. The ground beneath me vanished. I lifted my gaze, my voice raw. "You were married before me?" Emily's lips trembled. "Yes, but you told me you never—" "I know," she whispered. "I lied." Something inside me snapped. "Why?" Her breath hitched. Because, because I never got divorced?" The air left my lungs. I stared at her, waiting for her to say it was a mistake, a joke, anything. But she just stood there, silent. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "I'm still married." A sharp, suffocating silence filled the room, and in that moment, our entire marriage became a question I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My mind refused to process what Emily had just said. Still married. The words rang in my ears like a bomb had just gone off inside my head. 5 years. 5 years of a life I thought we had built together. Were they even real? Emily stood there, her arms wrapped around herself like she was bracing for a storm. But I was the one being ripped apart. I pushed the paper away as if touching it any longer would burn me. My voice came out raw, hoarse. "Who is he?" Emily's breath hitched. She hesitated, her lips parting like she was searching for the right words, or maybe a way to soften the blow. "His name is Adam." I had never heard that name before. I clenched my jaw, trying to swallow the fury that was bubbling in my chest. "Where is he now?" Her hands trembled. I don't know." A bitter laugh escaped me. She didn't know. Just like that. "You don't know?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "You don't know where the man you're still legally married to is?" Emily flinched, tears forming in her eyes. I thought I'd never have to deal with this again." Her voice cracked. "I thought it was over." "But it wasn't." My fists clenched. "Because you never ended it." She squeezed her eyes shut, as if trying to hold everything inside. But it was too late. The truth was already out. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up at me, her expression shattering into guilt and pain. "We got married when I was 19. That hit me like a punch to the chest. 19. That was years before I had even met her. I forced myself to breathe. "And you just walked away?" She shook her head quickly. "Number." It wasn't like that. I stood up, pacing the room, my hands running through my hair. The walls of our home, the home I thought was ours, felt too small now. "Then what was it like, Emily? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just pretended your husband didn't exist." She wiped her eyes, shaking her head. "I left him." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I left him because I was afraid." Afraid. That one word made something shift in the air. I turned to face her. "Afraid of what?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, her entire body trembling. And that's when I realized. This wasn't just a lie. This was something darker, something far worse than I had imagined. My voice softened, but the storm inside me didn't. "Emily, what happened?" She hesitated, and then finally, she whispered the words that changed everything. Adam isn't just my husband. He's my worst mistake. A chill ran down my spine. I had thought betrayal was the worst part of this, but I was wrong. Because Emily wasn't just hiding a marriage, she was running from something. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the truth. But it was too late. The truth was already coming for us. A cold shiver crawled up my spine as Emily's words hung in the air like a ghost. Her worst mistake. I wanted to be angry. I was angry. She had lied to me for years. She had let me believe I was the only man in her life, the only one she had ever made vows to. But now that illusion was shattered, and in its place was something far more terrifying. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. What do you mean, Emily? She bit her lip, her hands gripping the edge of the table, as if it was the only thing keeping her upright. Adam, he wasn't who I thought he was. A sharp breath left my lungs. And who was he? Her eyes lifted to mine, and I swore I had never seen her look so afraid. He was dangerous. The air in the room seemed to shift. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. Dangerous. That word carried weight. That word changed everything. I stepped closer, my pulse roaring in my ears. Emily, tell me exactly what you're saying. She exhaled shakily, rubbing her arms as if trying to rid herself of a chill. When I met him, he was charming, confident. He made me feel seen. And I was young, too young to know any better. We got married quickly, too quickly. But then, after the wedding, everything changed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, her eyes distant. He became possessive, controlling. At first it was small things, telling me what to wear, where I could go, who I could talk to. But then it got worse. My hands curled into fists. I could already tell where this was going. Her voice dropped lower. One night She stopped herself, pressing her lips together. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Let's just say I learned the hard way that I wasn't his wife. I was his property. My entire body went rigid. I felt a deep burning rage rise inside me. You mean he... My voice shook. Emily nodded, swallowing hard. I left. I ran. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't look back. She inhaled sharply. And I never filed for divorce because I was afraid that if I did, he'd find me. My stomach twisted. All this time I had been thinking she had kept this from me because she was ashamed or selfish. But now I realized she had kept it from me because she was terrified. I took a step toward her, my voice softer now. Emily, is he still looking for you? She froze, and then she nodded. My jaw tightened. 2 months ago, she whispered, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer, but later I got a text. She swallowed, her voice barely audible. It said, "Found you." The room spun. I felt like someone had knocked the air from my lungs. This wasn't just about a lie anymore. This wasn't just about a secret marriage. This was about a man who wouldn't let go. A man who had just found my wife. And now, whether I was ready for it or not, he was coming. The room felt colder, the weight of her words pressing against my chest like a crushing force. Found you. 2 simple words, but they carried the weight of a nightmare neither of us were prepared for. I clenched my fists, my pulse roaring in my ears. Why didn't you tell me? My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't help it. Emily flinched but didn't look away. Because I was scared. Her lips trembled. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away. I thought... Her voice cracked. I thought I could protect you. My heart twisted painfully. She had been carrying this alone. She had spent months looking over her shoulder, living in fear, and I never even noticed. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Did he contact you again? She nodded, hesitating before pulling out her phone. My stomach dropped as she handed it to me. My eyes skimmed over the messages, my blood turning ice cold. Unknown. It's been a long time, sweetheart. Unknown. You thought I'd never find you? Unknown. You belong to me. You always have. Unknown. See you soon? A sharp, searing rage exploded inside me. I gritted my teeth, my hands shaking with fury. He thinks he can just walk back into your life like this? I nearly growled. Emily's shoulders curled inward, her body trembling. I don't know what to do. Her voice was barely a whisper. I thought I was safe. I thought I left him behind. I could see it in her eyes. The fear, the helplessness, the weight of years spent running from a ghost that refused to stay buried. I placed the phone down carefully, then stepped forward, cupping her face in my hands. Listen to me, I said, my voice low, firm. He is not touching you. Do you hear me? Her eyes welled with tears. What if he finds me? He won't. My voice was steady, even though I felt anything but, because I won't let him. She let out a shaky breath, pressing her forehead against my chest. I wrapped my arms around her, my grip tight, protective. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a clear purpose. This wasn't just about secrets or betrayal anymore. This was about keeping my wife safe. This was about making sure that Adam never laid a hand on her again. And if he thought he could just walk into our lives and take her away from me, he was about to find out just how wrong he was. The weight of the moment settled between us like a storm brewing on the horizon. Emily was shaking in my arms, her breaths uneven, her body tense as if she expected the worst to happen at any second. But I wouldn't let it. I pulled back slightly, cupping her face, forcing her to look at me. We need to go to the police, I said firmly. She froze. Her eyes darted away, hesitation flickering across her face. No, she whispered. My stomach twisted. What? Emily, this guy is dangerous. He's threatening you. You can't just... He's smart, she cut in, her voice shaky but certain. You don't understand. He knows how to play the system. He's done it before. He'll make me look crazy. He always does. A sick feeling curled in my gut. I hated that she sounded so sure, like she had been through this before. I clenched my jaw, my hands tightening at my sides. Emily, you're my wife. I can't just sit back and do nothing. She exhaled shakily. I know, but if we go to the police without proof, he'll know we're scared, and that's exactly what he wants. My blood boiled. He wants to scare you. Her lips trembled. No. A beat of silence. He wants to take me back. Every muscle in my body tensed. That single sentence sent a wildfire of fury through me. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. Okay, I said, forcing my voice to stay level. Then we don't go to the police yet. She looked up at me, confused. We get proof first, I explained. We find a way to catch him, to make sure there's no way he can manipulate his way out of this. Emily swallowed hard. How? I exhaled. We set a trap. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? I grabbed her phone from the table, scrolling through the messages. If he thought he was in control, he was wrong. He's watching, right? I asked. She hesitated. Most likely. I clenched my jaw. Then we make him think you're alone, that you're vulnerable. Emily's breath caught. Bait? I nodded. We make him come to us. But this time we're ready. A long silence stretched between us. Then slowly, she nodded. Because running wasn't an option anymore. It was time to end this. The plan was simple. Lure him out, catch him in the act, and make sure he never touched Emily again. But simple didn't mean safe. I watched as Emily sat on the edge of our bed, staring at her phone screen with a mixture of dread and determination. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. I'll send the message, she whispered, glancing at me. I nodded, standing near the window on high alert. She exhaled shakily and began typing. Emily, I need to talk to you. Emily, I don't want to run anymore. She hesitated before hitting send. The moment she did, she visibly tensed, gripping the phone like it might burn her. We waited. Seconds felt like hours. Then, his reply came. Unknown. I knew you'd come back to me. My blood boiled. Emily sucked in a sharp breath, her hands shaking slightly as she scrolled down. Unknown, midnight. The place where we first met. She swallowed hard. I saw the fear flash across her face. Where is it? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She took a deep breath. An old parking lot behind a diner, no cameras, no people. Of course, he'd pick somewhere like that, somewhere he had control. Not this time. I clenched my fists. You're not going alone. Emily looked at me, her eyes dark with worry. What if this doesn't work? I took a step closer, my voice low and firm. It will. Because I wasn't just waiting for him to show up. I had already called someone. The final confrontation. The parking lot was dimly lit, the flickering street lamp casting long shadows. Emily stood a few feet away, her arms wrapped around herself, playing her part. I was hidden behind a nearby car, watching, waiting. The tension in the air was suffocating. Then footsteps. A dark figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, broad, moving with purpose. Adam. Even from a distance, I could feel his arrogance. He walked toward Emily like he already owned her. Sweetheart, his voice was smooth, confident, predatory. I knew you couldn't stay away forever. Emily stiffened, but didn't back away. I just want this to be over, she whispered. He smirked. It's not over. It was never over. I saw the way his fingers twitched, like he was ready to reach for her. That was my cue. I stepped out of the shadows. Actually, I said, my voice ice cold. It is. Adam whipped around, startled. His smirk faltered, but only for a second. He let out a dry laugh. Ah, so this is your new little protector? He tilted his head. You didn't tell him, did you? Emily's breath hitched. Tell me what? I demanded. Adam's smirk widened. That she's still mine. Rage exploded in my chest. But before I could react, the sound of sirens filled the air. Adam's smirk vanished. He spun around, eyes wide, realizing too late that he had been played. 2 police cars skidded into the parking lot, officers pouring out. One of them raised a gun. Hands where we can see them! Adam's jaw clenched, his muscles tensed, like he was about to run. But he never got the chance. I lunged first, slamming him against the pavement. A deep grunt left his throat as I pinned him down, fury pulsing through my veins. Touch her again, I hissed, my grip tightening, and I'll make sure you never see the light of day again. The officers rushed in, cuffing him. Adam thrashed, but it was over. Emily collapsed into my arms. It was over. She was safe. And Adam, he was finally where he belonged, behind bars. The aftermath. The next morning, Emily and I sat in our kitchen, the early sunlight streaming through the windows. The weight of years of fear, of secrets, of running, it was finally gone. She reached across the table, lacing her fingers with mine. I should have told you sooner, she whispered. I squeezed her hand. You're here now. That's what matters. She exhaled a real breath, free for the first time in years. I love you, she murmured. I lifted her hand to my lips, pressing a kiss against her fingers. And I will always protect you. For the first time since this nightmare began, we were free. And this time, no one was ever going to take that away from us.